Currently a staff writer for Talonmarks.
I'm actually a staff writer for Telemarks. I'm the associate multimedia editor, and I'm vice president of iFalcon Club, and I'm active member of Metcha Club.
And my role as vice president has to do with student services that are all around the college. So it's everything from when students first come to the college to while they're here and really after they leave, because we do admissions and records, counseling, financial aid, career services, assessment services, student health services, student affairs, campus police, international student services, CalWork services, reentry services, and disabled student programs and services, just a whole number of services all around the college.
Perfect. And so I always enjoy every time I have someone also who's faculty to tell us their story. You know, what was it like? You know, did you know right away going out of high school what you wanted to major in? Where did you want to go to college?
Right. So I think some of my interests were clear pretty early on, and then when I served as a student body president for a year and a half at my community college, my interests got more and more clear. When I transferred, I majored in political science and was able to take some classes in public administration, and that was very helpful. I then, sometime after graduation, was able to start in student services at a community college, and after doing that for a few years, obtained my master's degree in counseling, and which is, in California anyway, very important for those of us who want to do other work in student services. And then that subsequently led to a couple of administrative positions, and one as a coordinator, and then one as a dean, and currently the one as the vice president. And along the way also obtained my doctorate in educational leadership.
Oh, and you know, I know some students, you know, it's, multitasking is a big thing as well. You know, books can be expensive. Tell us about like the types of jobs you had, you know, throughout your whole college life and stuff.
Yeah, so while I was in college, the student government role was a key one in terms of my my work there. I also did tutoring in public high school for kids in the 4th and 5th grade, and then after that, you know, went into work. I worked at Bullock's department store when I first got out of college, and then soon after that went to work for the community college.
Perfect. We'll be right back after these public service announcements.
People don't much listen to the radio on the radio anymore. They listen on their desktops, they listen on their laptops, they listen on their tablets, and mostly they listen on their cell phones. You can hear WPMD on great streaming sites like TuneIn and Streama and Radio Shaker, and now you can listen to the place where people make a difference on our new WPMD app. It's free and ready for you to download. Just go to appcatch.com, that's appcatch.com, search for WPMD, then hit launch, and you're with us. It'll work on your iPhone, your Android, your BlackBerry, your iPad. You can take WPMD with you wherever you go, whenever you go. The WPMD app. One more reason why WPMD on the net is the place where people make a difference.
Your child has cancer. 4 words no parent wants to hear. Unfortunately, it is a reality for too many families. Because of you, St. Jude has the best survival rates for some of the most difficult childhood cancers, and families never have to pay St. Jude for the Children's Research Hospital for anything. They never receive a bill for treatment, travel, housing, or food, because the only thing a family should worry about is helping their child live. Because of you, there is St. Jude. Visit stjude.org to see all the research and patient care you make possible.
Welcome back to The Cat Show. Up next, we have Nico. Nico is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right. A group known especially for their sunspot sleeping, ball chasing, leg rubbing, couch purring, bed leaping, and of course, companionship.
Wonderful. And what breed would you say Nico is?
I'd have to go with a tabbyish Persian kind of mix.
Tremendous cat.
I'd also like to point out her coat's wonderful mix of colors. Is it black, gray, black, brown?
Somewhere in between.
Indeed.
You know, it's always special when we get to see a cat like this.
Just look how she struts.
It's like she owns the place.
And how she's so incredibly cute in her indifference to commands.
A strong-willed feline.
And see how she curls up and cuddles her person.
The pitch on her purring is simply perfect.
Nice one.
I know. Fantastic cat.
Fantastic indeed. But really the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Nico is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
And welcome back to the Falcon Spotlight. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, Rob JF, and we are here at Cerritos College in Norwalk, California, the WPMD radio station, where people make a difference. And I'm back here with my guests. Now, one of the things, that I thought would be cool also is, to have some, some extra students here, to interact, with our vice president and, ask anything they want, get to know, our administrators. Any questions?
Okay, so my question to you is, how has your experience here been as vice president? Can you tell us about your experience?
Sure. So I've been at the college almost 10 years, and it's been a really exciting time to be in student services in particular. And I will tell you that some of that exciting time has been a challenge, and some of it has been more in the building mode. And that's because over the time that I've been here, the state's gone through a process of rethinking the way it does budgeting for a number of the student services. So when we talk about categorical programs, most of the categorical programs at the college, and certainly the ones that have a lot of direct impact on students, are in student services. And historically, over the years, when there would be budget cuts, there might be proposals to have some reductions in those areas, pardon me, but ordinarily they wouldn't happen. But in the last fiscal crisis, those cuts did happen, and they were significant. And they impacted CalWorks, they impacted Disabled Student Programs and Services, EOPS, DSP, the matriculation program. So these are all programs that have relatively large student populations and have a lot of impact on the students that are served by them. So we went through quite a process of reworking our resources to deal with that during that time. And then just recently, the state has been in the business of helping to rebuild. And so we've seen some rebuilding in DSPS and CalWorks, and certainly for matriculation, which has become the Student Success and Support Program. So those as kind of overlays for much of what's been going on have been big parts of the experience here, but there's also been a lot of opportunities to see some really good things happen as we have developed programs, and we've been able to do everything from fine-tune PeopleSoft for students on the portal online to our very recent, just within the last month, launch of the PeopleSoft Ed Plan. That will be really, really helpful to students as they're watching their academic progress here at the college.
As you know, student Dr. Linda Lacey is retiring, so we have now found a new president. How do you feel about that?
Well, the College Board of Trustees did identify Dr. Joseph Fierro for new college president, and so we're looking forward to his beginning here. These transitions are always meaningful for places where people stay a long time, and in education, people tend to stay a while, and so when there's change, it's noticeable. And so we have that, that transition time coming, but it also means it's a time of opportunity and a time for, looking forward to where the college will be going in the next number of years, with everything that's on the horizon, everything from state resources to support the colleges, to new programs that we're identifying that we think will be really positive for student success. All of that, those things are moving along and will continue to take place here in the near future and in the long term.
I can assume that you've worked closely with President Linda Lacey. Can you talk to us about your experiences with her and kind of share moments that you've had with her?
Yeah. So Dr. Lacey, you may or may not know, but Dr. Lacey also came out of student services originally. So she had been what we refer to in the system as a chief student services officer, the person from Riverside City College who was the vice president for student services there. So her understanding of student services, her understanding of the categorical programs, of the funding formulas, and the policies that go with that, her understanding of student development has been something that we've been able to work together on. We've been able to talk about and collaborate in terms of putting together either new policies that we've needed to do or programs, services, budgets, what have you. So it's been, really good to be able to team up that way and get those things taken care of. So.
And so you said you were inspired before by being the president of your community college.
Mm-hmm.
And so can you give us some some ideas on how to get to where you're at now? How did you become so successful? How did you become so bold?
Okay. All right. So that's a really good question, and I think a lot of it has to do with getting a really good foundation in place. So when I was student body president, there were any number of projects to be able to take on. There were some real challenges. It was at a time when you may have heard of Proposition 13, but it's when Proposition 13 passed. And so there was a lot going on in the state about, how are we going to deal with a significant reduction in funding from local property taxes, and what's it going to be like if the state takes over doing a lot of the funding. So there were meetings and there were conferences, and I think part of being in a leadership role at that point in time exposed me to all of that was going on that had to do with how we do budgets, how we do policies, and what have you. So I think that sparked additional interest for me, and when I studied political science, that continued. And then when I got that first job at a community college, what was really positive about that is that it gave me an opportunity to work in a number of parts of student services. And so what that meant is that there was time in counseling, there was time in veteran services, there was time in student life, there was time in the high school diploma program, there was time in just all over the student services area. And as I did that, I think the combination of understanding what people need, what students need, and the opportunity to be part of making it happen really inspired me. So that, I think, gave me a lot of energy and inspiration, and I think that's energy and inspiration that carried me, through the times of making decisions to do more. So I was working full-time at what was certainly more than an 8-hour-a-day job when I did my master's program. And so that program had to be done in the evenings and weekends and what have you. And that program, I've often commented to people that one of the really exciting things about being in school while you're working is you have the opportunity to come up with ideas and to dream a little and to think, positively and bring back to the job some really positive ideas, some reasons to make some changes that will help students. And so that I think was part of it. And then it was just a matter of being, at a point in time where I had done lead roles in outreach when there was a downturn in enrollment. not too long into my career, the college put me in charge of outreach, so I did that for a number of years. I partnered with the public relations department and academic departments all over and had a really productive experience that way. And then there was a need for somebody to focus on student life. And so that was very exciting because I was able to take the whole kind of orientation to doing projects and to doing presentations and to really working with students to develop them as individuals and put it to work on a daily basis in that. And then that, I think all of that together, the basis in a variety of student services and in the different lead roles, then prepared me for when I went to become an assistant dean for student affairs, and then took that on with all the functions that had to do with. So I think throughout the time, what has made the biggest difference has been the inspiration that comes and the sort of the energizing that comes from the opportunity to create programs or write procedures or put together presentations or invite guest speakers or whatever it might be that will really help students because that's what we're about.
We've talked about the new president coming in. I'm sure you'll be working together. What opportunities do you see in both of you working together, and what do you think is on the horizon for Cerritos College?
Well, I think the opportunities working together will be to forge new programs, new services, as we see them becoming necessary. And that's kind of part of the process that we go through on a regular basis. But I think also, this is a really exciting time in California because we have an opportunity to, again, affect change, make positive change for students because we have some resources available to us now through the Student Success and Support Program, through the Student Equity Program, through some others, and so as those resources come to us and as we're able to talk about how to best put them to work, I think that's where we'll spend a good amount of our time, is in having that vision, creating some mile markers along the way so that we're measuring our progress and making sure that we're moving forward and putting programs to work.
So you mentioned how during your experience that you're growing up and like how to get to where you're at now, how did you find time to manage everything, your full-time job, your activities? As a student, it's hard for me to balance, and I understand that's frustration. I can't spend time with my family and be at school and involved at the same time. So how did you do it?
Right, I understand that, and I really feel for it because it's a struggle. And I think, especially for folks who have other people in their lives to whom they're close, family and maybe other people, I think that is an ongoing challenge. And one of the things that helped me was to make sure that I let the people around me know what I was doing. And I had to be, I think, clear, about what was going on, what kind of projects were kind of hitting, at a top level that was, really making an impact on my time or my energy or my focus. I had to just kind of continue to let people know that, and then also explain what it involved, because a lot of times people don't know. You can say, well, I'm working on this project, or I've got this homework and all of this due, but it's, part of it in college is where, and it's the same thing for the master's program, the doctoral program, we don't do a lot of the work in the classroom. So we end up having to do it at other times. And for so much of our lives, when we're busy, it's because we're at work or we're at school or what have you. And what happens with college is you've got all this additional time commitment, but you're not necessarily at something. So I really appreciate the folks who can carve out time to be in the library because it does help to be at something right? And being at the library is really valuable for doing all that work you have to do outside of class. And sometimes in my own experience that helped. You know, if I told people, well, I've got to be in the library for 6 hours, it was like, okay, I understand you have something big you have to do, and this is going to take a chunk of time. But it is an ongoing process, and it means, you know, communicating and hoping that there's a way to find to help folks understand what it takes. But I think for sure what doesn't work is just thinking that everybody knows. You know, because for a lot of folks, the experience is, well, I know what I did while I was in class, you know, and I know all the work I was doing there and what have you, but all this time outside of class really varies for people in terms of what, you know, understanding what it takes. So I think that's a big part of it. And I should add to that I don't assume that everybody will understand. And that's one of the things that is hard. You know, that's a real challenge, is that it doesn't always make sense to folks. And that's where I think one of the things, anyway, is to kind of find other ways to show people what it takes and maybe help to make it more understandable. And sometimes that's, you know, inviting a friend to go to the library with you, and or inviting a family member to go to the library with you, and you know, they can you know, see what it takes for you to pull all the resources out, go through them, make notes, you know, highlight maybe your own textbook, listen to recordings, watch, you know, whatever, and put together all the information you need just to do, you know, maybe one project. That can really help, because I think a lot of times just knowing what's involved is really useful to the people in our lives, and especially our loved ones.
Well, everything that we've been mentioning, it all sounds like so much hard work and understanding from family and loved ones and such, and the people around us. Can you tell us what your biggest challenges have been as vice president, and what your proudest moment has been, or your proudest moments?
Okay. So for the biggest challenges, I really would have to go back, not to repeat an earlier, you know, comment, but I really would have to go back to those reductions in funding. So if we go back and we think about the purposes of those categorical programs, they're in place to make sure that we have really good resources for the students who need those programs. So EOPS, DSPS, CalWorks, Student Success and Support Program, which was matriculation. Those are designed to make sure, you know, we have counselors in place, we have assistants in place that can support students, we have resources in place that can support students. And when you have dedicated your life, as I had and have, to student services, going through the process of pulling those resources back, meaning there would be actual impacts on students, that I have to say was the most difficult. You know, there are day-to-day challenges all the time, but the thought of that and the reality of it, it really was the most difficult. So that'd be a big one. The high points, or high point, but you heard me, I went plural, and I just have to be really, I just have to tell you what's real in terms of my experience. The programs, the events, the stories, when we find out that either a student or a group of students, a class of students, maybe it's the nursing class, it's the dental hygiene class, you know, when students succeed, when they complete, you know, when they finish, when they get to their goal, seeing the excitement and the happiness is truly rewarding. And each of those times, and we're in one of those times now where it's near the end of the academic year, and we have completion ceremonies, we have graduation ceremonies, we have the college-wide commencement, we have awards programs, and in each of these we are seeing folks who have been able to get to where they wanted to go, and it's very, very rewarding. Just being some part of that is makes for high points along the way.
And when things don't exactly go the way they should, how do you deal with that stress? How do you deal with?
That's a really good question, and I think one of the things I would say about that is that I think my response probably has developed over time, and I hope it's getting better, and I think it is. But I can tell you that although I say it's developing, it's gotten better, I will tell you that I think along the way, my primary response to stress has been to realize that that's a signal that I need to stop and say, okay, what's causing this? And then once I identify that, what can I do to deal with it? And depending on whether it's a quick item or a longer term item, means that, okay, stop and jump in and start working on the part that is stressing, or if it's longer term, do what I refer to, and maybe other folks do too, but with projects with big concerns, chunk it, break it into chunks and make those chunks manageable and start working away at them. And depending on if it's something that's going to take time or if it's something that can be dealt with all at once. And it's kind of, when I think about it, I realize that even with, the small projects in homework or the big projects in homework, it was some of that gave good practice for this thing of having something that had to be done. And if it was big, chunking it so that it could be broken down into something manageable. But I think that's a lot of it. And there's no way to not have stress involved. But if stress can be a signal or something that can be put to work, hopefully, you can make something a little more positive out of it in terms of your personal experience, but maybe a lot more positive in terms of whatever it is that needs to be done for others that might be involved in the stress.
And so as Vice President of Student Services, you're seen as a leader, so you lead a lot of people. And so my question is, how do you get people involved, with things that you agree with or your ideas, not just the people you work with, but also students? So how do you motivate people?
Right. So one of the things is that we live in a time of information, right? So you hear comments about the information age and what have you. And I think that's a really exciting thing. And I think what it brings with it is the need, or the sense, at least, but probably the need for people to have information and know, what's needed, what's going on, what have you. And for my time, especially in the role of the Vice President, what's been particularly useful have been times when we've done student services-wide meetings or retreats where we'll spend half a day or a day over in the student center on a Friday, and we'll talk about major things that we have going on in terms of our planning and also our assessment of how we've been doing. And we take that assessment of how we've been doing, and then we use that to help us with our planning, so that we're getting better and better as we go along. But in that process, when if it's me, if it's somebody else, if you're in that process where you get to talk about what has been going on, and in that assessment process, and get to remember some issues or hear about some issues that people had, and then also get to then turn around and talk about, well, what would work best for getting that to improve? How can we do this better, but make it workable, make it affordable, make it positive, but bottom line, make sure students get what they need. And participating in that process and being able to do it together and hearing each other, so that we have a sense of, maybe something that we didn't think about that somebody else did think about. I think that's been really helpful. And it's sort of, not sort of, but we used a similar model for putting together, for instance, the student equity plan. We did a summit, we did 2 summits actually, where we had folks from all over the campus together. We did a discussion about, the principles and the ideas and some of the purposes, and then we had breakout time when we talked about, what could we actually do, and what are some ideas, and what do we want to try to look into further, and what have you. So especially the times when we have the groups together and the information is there, again, the assessment information, the planning information, and the ability to affect the discussion and the change that everybody has in that process. I think that's been, those have been the highlights, and it's also, I think, in terms of leadership, it's making those times and those opportunities happen. And I will say, every industry, every business has some things that are particular to it. In student services, we're very much in the business of serving people. And so when you're in a people-serving business, then the people who are hearing from the students directly, the people who are trying to design programs or procedures that will be better for students, having everybody talk together, and especially being able to hear what's worked, what hasn't, what have you, it just really benefits the process. And I think the leadership part is giving opportunities for that to happen, and maybe talking about, here's what we have this year, or here's some pressing issues this year, and what else is there that we need to talk about.
We'll be right back after these public service announcements.
Nothing better demonstrates an artist's ability to perform, to connect with his audience, than his work on stage. At the WPMD Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, we bring you Roadwork. A series of great concerts, start to finish, uninterrupted, from the greatest names in rock and roll. All from the WPMD archives. Some haven't aired in years, some have never aired at all. And you have the best seat in the house, right in front of your speakers. Roadwork. Throughout the week, on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, on WPMD on the net, where people make a difference.
The first ever WPMD Roadwork Memorial Marathon is coming, starting at 6 a.m. on Monday, May 25th. For more than 18 hours of Rock and Roll Hall of Famers presented in concerts that have never aired at all, or have never aired before, and maybe nobody's ever aired before. Be listening for more details coming soon on WPMD on the net.
As I went through school, one giant question loomed over me. What did I want to be? But in order to know what I wanted to be, I had to first decide what I wanted to make. I wanted to make more. So I became a teacher. Now I make learning a privilege, not a chore, and frustration a tool, not an obstacle. I make working hard seem easy, and giving up impossible. I make an old subject feel like a fresh thought, and unconventional methods common. I make material things less important, and little things like patience and kindness count. I make weekdays more exciting than weekends, and classrooms feel like anything but. I make things different, which is all I ever hoped for. I'm a teacher. I make more.
Find out how you can make more at teach.org. Make more. Teach. Brought to you by Teach and the Ad Council.
And welcome back to the Falcon Spotlight, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Rob JF, here at WPMD Studios, located at Cerritos College, Norwalk, California. And I'm back here with my guests. And Dr. Johnson, I was also wondering, we have so many clubs and stuff. I was wondering, were you in any clubs or fraternity or anything like that?
No fraternity, and the involvement I did again was through student government, and then also taking part in activities in a residence hall and what have you, so primarily that way. I've worked with over my years in supporting the Student Life program, worked with many student organizations that way.
I know that when I had Dr. Schilling here the other day also, I was, the question came to mind was, as a VP, you guys must have a ton of meetings to attend. I was wondering you could let us know, what's a typical schedule like for your role, the types of meetings you have to attend, and tell us about shared governance.
Okay, good. Yeah, so there are a number of meetings, you're right, and they tend to happen during the day. And so what that means is spending a good amount of time in discussions and in decision making and what have you in those meetings, and information sharing in those meetings during the day, and then focusing on paperwork and projects and what have you after those meetings, usually after those meetings. Email, usually after those meetings. But you get at something that's really important in this college and in our system, but certainly is part of the fabric of this college, and that is shared governance. And I think it is one of the things that makes us that much better, because we have folks from across the campus who are involved in the discussions, in the idea sharing, in the decision-making process, and it means that we have students, we have faculty, we have staff, we have administrators, all at the same table, all talking, from the same, agenda and materials, and talking about what needs to be addressed. And those committees range from enrollment management, where we're talking about, when we schedule classes, how we schedule classes, how we know we have enough classes to meet student needs, to Student Equity Committee, talking about new programs and services that we'll do within that area, to the Planning and Budget Committee, which does a combination of talking about planning and also looking at budgeting and making recommendations on budgets, and the College Coordinating Committee, which has is where all the other committees report their activity and makes recommendations on all sorts of college-wide matters. But within all of that shared governance structure, I think is something that that really benefits us, because people are able to identify the things that are important, and then the whole group can talk about that, and it means that everybody not only gets their concerns made available, and so folks can talk about them, but it also makes sure that there's a communication source back to the rest of the people. So the representatives who are sitting at enrollment management or at the College Coordinating Committee, just like the representatives who are sitting on the Faculty Senate and student government, they not only bring information into those discussions, but they take information back out and can make that available to their members, and then they can get additional feedback, and there can be continued discussion. And just a moment about all that in terms of beyond Cerritos College, beyond California, it may not always be called shared governance. Sometimes it's called collegial governance. I think participatory governance is another term that is used regularly. But the Accrediting Commission, which is regional, and it certainly goes beyond California, involves a number of states and territories of the United States. The Accrediting Commission looks to institutions to have what's sometimes referred to as robust discussion about improving student success. And so one of the ways we get at that robust discussion is by having these shared governance groups talk about what they're seeing, what they've observed, what we need to know about, and how we can take that information to do those improvements, to learn from what we've been doing, to assess what we've been doing, and then put it to work to improve our programs. And when I say improve our programs, it really does run the gamut. It's from talking about the kinds of services we have available in a given office when you walk in, to the resources and functionalities we have available for you online, to what we identify as, student learning outcomes, the important learning outcomes that a student needs to have out of a course, out of a major or degree program, out of an area of the college. It feeds into all of these things so that we're, in fact, we have places and times to have those robust discussions about how to improve what we're doing. And it's an ever-changing landscape. You know how much technology is changing, how quickly, but it's only one of the things in this world, of course, that changes. And as those changes happen, we have to keep moving. And especially in education, we have to keep moving, because we've got to make sure, we're always preparing students to the absolute best ability that we have.
And we are down to our final 6 minutes, but I always ask everyone that's on my show this question. What was your goal for the semester, and where do you see yourself after your time at Cerritos College?
Oh my. Okay. Well, I would say the goal for the semester was probably more focused on getting our student equity process up and running, getting our student equity committee up and running, and getting the policy in place, getting the procedure in place, getting the committee approved. That was a big one because it's not only for the best interests of the students and the college, but it's also an expectation from the state. So there was need and necessity from a number of places. So that would be the big part. Wow, after Cerritos College, you know what? I don't think about that too often, but that's, boy, you're throwing me, Rob. I got to think about that one for a minute. I don't know. I would say that for sure I want to always be in a position, and I don't want this to sound like it's just something you're expected to say, but it really is part of who I am. I would want it always to be in a role and in a place and in a position to be able to make good things and better things happen for students. It's really so much a part of what I've spent so much of my life on, and it means so much to me. And I think, one of the best ways we value people is that when they're in a place where they're working toward a goal, and that could be in a job, it could be in school, and that could be in a whole degree program or a transfer program, or it may be in taking a couple of classes. But when we can be there for each other, when we can be there for people to achieve those outcomes, that I think has such a long-term impact on people's lives, and is the kind of way that we really make a difference for each other. That I just hope to always be a part of that process of making it more possible, making it better, making it more useful for people who are students to succeed.
Well, my goal for the semester was, to be in talent marks and kind of move on up, and I have accomplished that. I now have an editor position, so I think I accomplished that. And as far as after leaving Cerritos, I actually have Columbia University in my sights. So those are my goals. That's what I hope to accomplish. Jasmine, what about you?
Well, this semester, this is actually my last semester here at Cerritos College, and so my whole goal was just to do everything, get involved in everything. I had always been a student that just went home and came to school and never actually got to know my campus, but after joining clubs and getting involved in telemarks and getting to know the faculty, I'm really glad I did that. So that was my goal, just to do everything, and Yasmin 2K15. And so actually when I'm planning to transfer, I'm undecided to either UCSB or CSULB, but I plan to do a lot of great things. The world is out there waiting for me. I'm going to be out there, so I'm going to be successful.
Yes, I agree.
Awesome. That's great.
We have 2 minutes left. Any closing statements?
I think that I think for both Jasmine and I, it's something that we felt to mention, but I think that we both strive to bring awareness, and we want to continue to use our voices to bring awareness about the inequalities that are going on in the world, and I think that's why we're both in Mecha and we're both, active members. So that's one of the things that we also strive to do, and that we see in our futures.
Thank you for having us on your
Yeah,
show.
thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure and great to hear that from the students about focusing on more work that the world needs to have done. It's super.
Well, I want to thank my guests for taking the time to be here on the Falcon Spotlight. Ladies and gentlemen, tune in every Tuesday at 2 p.m. live for the Falcon Spotlight. You can also remember to like my fan page on Facebook. Just look up Cerritos College Falcon Spotlight. And also, the show gets uploaded later, usually by the weekends, onto YouTube. So until next time, folks.